Hey, how's it going? It is Monday, May 18th, and this is the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. We're on YouTube, so click subscribe, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. Today we'll get some coronavirus updates, the UN warning countries about the effects of the pandemic on mental health, and a look into the Sunday message, the diligent will gain. So, I hope all of you guys had a wonderful, wonderful weekend. It is already Monday, a new week has begun. It was an epic weekend because so many things happened. We had a bubble talk on Saturday, and we talked about knowing whether you have good friends. So go and check it out on the Espresso with Sky YouTube channel. And we definitely encourage you to check out the live bubble talks every Thursday at 8 p.m. in Malaysia time on Facebook. But the day has changed from Saturday night to Thursday night on Bubble Talk Live Facebook page. Also know that we'll soon be live streaming from Espresso with Sky YouTube channel too. By the way, once again, those of you who haven't noticed, the YouTube and SoundCloud channels have changed their name. We are no longer Latte with Sky, but we are now MSD 117.8. And that's because too much confusion with Latte and Espresso. Which one is newcomer? Which one is member? People are having a hard time remembering, so we just completely switched one. So it's MSD 117.8 for members, and the coffee Espresso with Sky is for newcomers. So remember, MSD 117.8, it's easier for you guys in the future to tell the difference between the two. Great. Now that we got that out of the way, yesterday was the Sunday edition, and we interviewed a member from Japan who also won a Miss Universe regional pageant. Make sure you go check it out on the Sunday edition, and that's with Hikari. Big shout out to Abraham T in Malaysia, Koichi in Hachiochi City in Tokyo, Talia in LA, and Miss Chan in Vancouver for supporting us on Patreon. If you want to support us too, then click the Patreon link in the description. So, let's move on to the featured artist of the day. Today's featured artist is Mariah Henry, featuring the Somni Boys. We want to get this week started. It's a Monday. Everyone feels a little bit slow and groggy, so we're going to start with some upbeat music to get your blood pumping. We're going to hear the hit single, I Win, from her At the Start album. The second song will also be a cool song from PGY of the Paper Music Associates. The single is Dr. Rain. So guys, sit back, relax, let these two songs uplift you guys to start this week well on this Monday.
This is on a high level, you can't catch us, we the fastest, you the turtle, we the cheapest. Slicing demon like fajitas, I'm just crazy with ideas, so don't you make me turn into your greatest fear. I'm just shining brightly like the star of Hollywood. I just said I care like the little engine could. Made my dreams for real with the action that I took. Celebrate the win cause it feels so good. Thought it'd be over but we put up a fight. Move to the left because this history's right. You thought we stumbled, but we finished. Achieved victory, we did it. Put your hands up high, cause now we won. Sometimes it's hard when my head is up high. He works too hard for you to say it's a lie. You thought he stumbled, but he finished. Achieved victory, we did it. And my hands are up like I got that go, rock him till like flames. And this way, too much inside my brain. We shine the light like cannot be contained. We got the truth, we figured it out, you know we ain't crazy. Determination in my eyes, got my eyes on the prize. They looking staring at the sky, they don't know about these times. But I'ma just keep on just killing it. They looking at us like we villains. They silly, I'm like really, don't you know I'ma kill it. I'm not dropping low, everything I do for him is not just for show. They come and they go, but I don't mind value, my position staying for show. You wanna be great, you have to have the vision and the purpose for it. RP to the face, cause they're gonna all get exploited. Thought it'd be over, but we put up a fight. Move to the left because this history's right. You thought we stumbled, but we finished. Achieved victory, we did it. Put your hands up high, cause now we won. Sometimes it's hard when my head is up high. He works too hard for you to say it's a lie. You thought he stumbled, but he finished.
And that was Dr. Rain from PGY of the Paper Music Associates. And that first song was from Mariah Henry featuring the Someday Boys. And that song was I Win. Let's take a look at the coronavirus updates for today. And of course, it's after the weekend, so the numbers are going to bump up a lot because we skipped 2 days. So in the world right now, there's about 4.75 million cases, and we've crossed the 300,000 threshold. Well, on Friday, it was 299,000, right? So it was inevitable. We're at 315,000 right now. And of course, the world mortality rate, the death rate of the coronavirus is roughly around 6.7%, around there. So just make sure you keep that in mind when you look at the death rate. The U.S. is at 1.5 million cases with 90,000 deaths. That's a huge number. They're going to be hitting 100,000 probably within the next couple of weeks. But their mortality rate, death rate, is at 5.97%, so well below the world average. Russia's at 280,000 cases with 2,600 deaths, which is probably not true. And also the UK is 240,000 cases with 34,000 deaths, and they're still pretty high with about 14.3%, 3-4% death rate. Brazil's at 233,000 cases with 16,000 deaths, which is at 7%, which is around the world average. So it's not terrible, but it's still at the world average. Canada, 76,000 cases, 5,700 deaths, which is 7.49%, which is, we're looking almost a full percentage point above the world average. Sweden, of course, that's the country we're always looking at. They're at 30,000 cases with 33,700 deaths. But if you think about it carefully, if we compare it to what we saw on Friday, it actually didn't go up very much. I think it only went up like 100-something deaths over the weekend, and their death rate actually went down. It was at 12.3 something, and now it's at 12.21. So we see that it looks like there's less deaths, and just the testing is going well, and there's more cases, right? So one thing you have to look at this mortality rate, this death rate. It goes according to testing. Like, one thing that happened over the weekend is they were testing for antibodies in New York, and they found something like 13% of the people had the antibodies for the coronavirus. So if you take that survey, it means that if 13% of all of New York had it, that's like 2.7 million people who have the coronavirus. And if you took that number into account of the people who actually caught the coronavirus, it means that their death rate is no longer that high anymore. It would be like 0.5%. It'd be really low. Yeah. It would be nothing close to what it is right now. So it's one thing that we have to understand is a lot of these numbers are super inflated because we're not going to be able to test every single person. But that's why the antibody testing is a very important thing. With the antibody testing, you get to see the people, how many people actually got the coronavirus. And if you have that number compared to the deaths, then you'll see that the number is nothing close to the percentages they have right now. And most epidemiologists and doctors are saying that is most likely going to be anywhere from like 0.2 to 0.5%, maybe around that range, but more likely on the lower end of 0.2 or 0.3, somewhere along there. So like, this is all, these death rates are kind of they're not meaningless, but they're kind of meaningless as in, it's not true. It's much lower. Some interesting news around the world, though, is there seems to be a big outbreak in Wuhan. And, of course, China's not telling us, but they are testing every single citizen in Wuhan right now. 11 million people are being tested in Wuhan right now, as crazy as that is. And, of course, there's tons of complaints coming out because everyone's scared of the coronavirus, but they're making people stand in line all day, and everyone's, like, close to each other. It's crazy, right? But 11 million people, everyone in Wuhan is getting tested right now, so you know something's going down. Also, another interesting news is the health minister in Brazil has stepped down. Like, in this crazy time right now where, you know, Brazil is a place where there's a big outbreak, and they're, like, third in the world for cases and deaths, like going up, the rate of it. And interesting thing is, there was constantly this big fight between the health minister and the prime minister, and the prime minister is like straight up denying that the coronavirus is anything special. So he even mocks it, and he mocks the people like who say it's a big thing. So he's kind of like a little bit extreme of this, like, this is nothing, it's just a flu, when obviously it's not just a flu when we have this many people dying, right? So that's what's going on in Brazil. A lot of people are very critical of the president, of the prime minister over there. And just recently, like I said, the health minister has stepped down. And that is your coronavirus update. Let's take a look at some current news. As the UN says, there's a mental health crisis coming from the fallout of the pandemic. We saw some interviews from many different people from around the world, whether it's regular people or from people on the front lines like nurses and doctors. I saw one interview from a woman from Albania. She's a nurse, and she's basically been fighting for 2 months on the front lines. She has like a 15-month-old daughter, a 10-year-old son. And also her parents are very susceptible because, they're very elderly. She's really worrying about them. She was like crying the entire time during the interview. In Washington, D.C. in America, we looked at a food bank, and because of people's economic problems, mental problems are stemming in these areas because of not having food. The UN is urging governments to be more proactive, especially with the frontline workers, the elderly, and those with pre-existing mental health conditions, and those that are in conflict and in crisis at the moment. Some UK psychologists were saying that people really need help to understand how to see the signs when your mental health is deteriorating. So the cool thing is UK psychologists are actually making videos to help parents deal with the stress and see the signs of what is happening. Many families are struggling, and of course it's not a surprise because of what's happening. Another interesting thing that's happening for people with mental health are people who already have pre-existing conditions, like mental health conditions. Therapy groups can't meet anymore. Like I was looking at this one therapy group in Australia, and they use like these people with depression and bipolar mental disorder. They usually meet on the beach, which is really nice and soothing. But now, because of all the ordinances and the orders coming from the government, they can't even meet on the beach. So they're all meeting through like those like video chats and such. Mexico's finding a good way to deal with the mental health. As I was looking at one report, they have one of the nurses brings her dog in, like this pug. Just really ugly, because that's why they're so cute, because they're super ugly, right? So they're bringing their dogs into the hospitals, and like whether it's frontline workers or patients, they just want to hug the dog. And one of the things that the psychologists are saying that it's because people are lacking physical contact these days because of this virus. So one of these important buffers of stress that that they're doing in some of these hospitals, they're actually bringing their dogs, which is really cool. So both frontliners and patients are benefiting from this. It just shows you that there is such a huge mental effect that's happening right now from this coronavirus pandemic, and these lockdowns and isolations that are stopping people from having that physical contact that we desperately need. Some indirect effects of the pandemic is anxiety, violence, and hunger. Right? So, and this is actually affecting children mainly. And this is something very interesting because especially on children, because they're way more susceptible to this mental stress, right? There's this on children, even though children are not susceptible to the virus. It's very, very few that are susceptible to them, but they're suffering much from the anxiety, violence, and hunger that happens because of an indirect effect of the pandemic. If you think about it, play parks are closed. These kids can't play with their friends. They're in lockdown. Some of them are going hungry. So the children most at risk from the effects of children are the most at risk from the effects of this outbreak, and their well-being, their mental health are all impacted. Another big thing that's affecting children is they have to get out. They can't go to school. They're home all day, and the parents are also stressed too. And a lot of children are now facing more abuse. And a lot of them, because their parents are out of jobs, are going hungry. So the UN is saying that the 4 things that affect children the most is education, health, poverty, and safety. And those are the 4 things that are crucial to children. And they say at the moment there's about 1.2 billion children and youth. They've stopped going to school. And the hard part is you have many countries that roll out distance programs where kids go to school through the internet. However, there's a lot of countries that don't have access to the internet too. So that makes it a little bit harder for other countries where their children have nothing to do. They can't even learn. Think about this. Children who need speech therapy, children who have learning difficulties, disabilities, they can't get that help anymore. Also, when it comes to vaccinations, a lot of the polio vaccination programs have stopped. Not stopped, but they halted. Like they're postponed, mainly because parents aren't willing to go to the hospital because they're scared of getting the virus. On top of that, there's vaccine shortages because borders are now closed. children that are going hungry because they're used to getting their food from school. That's why now social workers and teachers have to step in to feed the hungry families. And this is a big thing that's affecting the children. The mental health of these children are affected a lot because they're separated from their friends, from their relatives they usually go to meet. And one thing that they said is actually really affecting children right now, like psychologists were saying, the routines have drastically changed. And I'm not sure how it does this, but they said that if the routine drastically changes, it can damage a child's brain in the long term, not just short term. So recent studies in mainly Western countries at the moment, they say that about 1 in 4 children struggle from the lockdown, school closures, and being isolated. We're talking mental, right? Mentally, they're going through some struggles. And there's a way, if you're a parent right now with children, there's a way that you can help your children. And parents, this is kind of what the therapists were saying. They're saying that parents, the way that you can help your children, number one is by the tone of your voice. Right, the way that you speak to your children, the children are going to notice this. It's the words they hear from you, the children are going to be affected by this, and also the expressions they see on your face will affect them too. And these are 3 things you have to really, really think about carefully. Another thing that parents, these psychiatrists and therapists were saying, that parents can help their children by equipping them with mental skills. And the most important mental skill that your children need right now is resilience. And resilience means what? Resilience is being strong and positive, which is the opposite of helpless and hopeless, which leads to depression. Okay, so this is what you need to help your children with. What mental skill you need to help your children with is to focus on what you can. Let them focus on what they can control. Focus on what is going right. Not saying that we ignore what is wrong or deny that things are going wrong, but to focus on what is right, focus on what you can control. And this is what you call resilience. And you want your children to pick up this mental skill. Another big problem with parents, and I know that parents that have lost their jobs are going through a really big struggle. And if you have, what's going to happen is, they say 66 million children will fall into extreme poverty from this pandemic. Especially with children already in low-income families, if their parents lose their job, hunger, poverty, desperation that's what the children are going to see. They're going to have little or no savings, no financial aid in poorer countries, and that's why 66 million children will fall into extreme poverty. So, if you think about this, children feel the most safest and secure at home, but the problem now is, like child abuse is going higher because parents are stressed, parents have no jobs. Financial security went out the door. These lockdowns are making it easier to abuse victims. And the reason is, in the past, children weren't abused as much because they're not home, because they're at school, the parents are at work and such. But now it's a lot easier, and the numbers are going up where children are being abused, and it's less likely to be detected. And the reason is, the people that notice the abuse are usually the teachers. But now that they're not in school, the teachers are unable to detect the signs of child abuse because they're not there anymore. So as we see even now, it's not just our country here and the country that you're in right now. We really have to think carefully of how we're treating the situation, stay positive, make sure that we have that resilience, not just instilling it into our children, but ourselves too. And I hope that all of us too will be able to pray about these indirect effects that the pandemic is having. Okay, so that brings us to a very hopeful and happy time because it's time for praise. And the first song is going to be from this week's Sunday message. And of course, what was the song that we heard? He says, this is a song that's really good because it's flying on the wind of the Holy Spirit. And if the winds and the waves make you go faster. Right, so that's the first song we're going to hear, so everyone can get up and dance and sing to this. And the second song, another really good hopeful song, is The Lord is My Joy and Hope.
not forget. Think of me, that's what she always says. People though, they live their lives, changing all the time. They don't really keep their promises. Though they may say that they'll think of her first in their life day to day, forgetting all that they live their own way. You and I both, even today, let's take action with the thoughts of the Lord. That's the joy we gain as we act with the Holy Spirit. Life without the Lord, how could we live? No one could live like that. Without fun, without hope, oh, what kind of life is that? Since the Lord is my hope and joy, I'll always follow. The Lord is my pride. Here's the source of my confidence. I think of Him everywhere that I go, hoping I can tell someone, tell them of my Lord, boast about Him to everyone I see. I'll tell them all those stories of His life, endless stories about Him. Anyone who hears me will be completely blown away, astonished and amazed, because I am His bride, I am His beloved, because I'm His bride, the one He loves, because I'm His joy and His sunshine. My face glows with love. Everyone who sees me will wonder why they want to know more. But how can they know Him? Secrets of the times and of the Lord they'll not know, but remain in ignorance until they are told they will not know at all. As one who knows, I will surely tell the world, tell them the truth, testify for Him, then they will know. My Lord once spoke to me, to my heart. My love, testify to all of the world. Please, love, testify for me. Then the Lord God will be with you, speaking through your lips every day. You will be moved by the Spirit. She'll enlighten you. my pride. He's the source of my confidence.
That is The Lord is My Hope and Joy, and that first song was Flying on the Winds of the Holy Spirit. I hope you guys enjoyed those two praise songs, and I hope that it kind of gives you strength and makes you want to run and be diligent this week, because this week's message, yes, the diligent will gain. So let's get into this week's word study. And this week's message, of course, we heard yesterday, great message, the diligent will gain, and everything, like all these messages over the last 3-4 weeks, just like coming together, like putting things into, first it was like research and study, and then it's like putting into action, and those who take action have power and authority. And then now that we're taking action, it's about being diligent and continuously doing it over and over again. Now, like every week, of course, every message is a message for the ages. It's a great message. This week's message was interesting because from the get-go, like the first sentence he gave was just boom, like in your face. One of the first things he said, like he gave an answer to one of the questions that everyone always asks. And what's the question? The question is, how can I set myself on fire? How come I'm not on fire anymore? I used to be on fire, but I'm not on fire anymore, right? Like everyone always asks that question. Like, how can I set myself on fire? Like I used to be on fire so much, but I don't feel the fire anymore. Fire, right? Everyone talks about being on fire, that they once were on fire before, but now like, I don't know why the fire is gone. But in the very beginning of the message, he gives this statement, basically answers all the questions. Right, and one thing that's really cool about yesterday's message, it's about, I just give you a sentence, I just give you a statement, and I can't tell you everything. But I give you a statement, and you got to study it, right? And you got to see exactly, I can't say every single thing to you, there's not enough time for it. But it's one of the things, there wasn't even a question, it was just an answer from the very beginning. And I really think it's something that we really need to do when we listen to the message. This is how I make my lectures. This is how I come up with introductions for my lectures or sermons. Because in the message, there's like different things we get out of the message, and if we don't catch it, like the message just passes by no matter how deep it is. It's like a proverb, right? A proverb is so deep, you just read it and it could pass by. So in this week's message, yesterday, right? Sometimes, we just got an answer. Like sometimes you get questions, right? Sometimes we just get a question and there's no answer. Remember, like, was that 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago? When it was like, so Adam and Eve, they ate the fruit and they became like God. Their eyes opened, they became like God. You want to hear the answer? We're like, yes, tell us. And he's like, well, maybe not. And then he doesn't tell us the answer. So we just have a question that's like brewing in our heads the entire time. Great. It's amazing because it makes you start thinking about it. It makes you think about the question so much to the point you give up on thinking about it. Because it's like, I can't figure it out. And we think about it for like 3 days until Wednesday message comes along and he's finally like, okay, I'll tell you the answer. And then the whole Wednesday message was on that one question. It was perfect. I didn't like doing it for 3 days, but it was perfect. It's just engaging. Just a question. Oh, yeah. What the heck does that mean? And on the flip side, it's also interesting because sometimes we just get an answer. And like I said, that answer comes by, like you hear the answer. And we're wondering what the question is. So it's very interesting because this week's message, what was that first thing? Like you're like, hold on, what did he say? What did he say? What do you mean about the fire? And what Sunsteam said is, if you want to stay on, people who take action are set on fire. And once you lose that fire, it's really hard to get back. There's the answer. Boom. In your face, right? How do it's while you're taking action, you set yourself on fire. It's almost like when people are trying to make a fire and they have a flint stone and they're hitting the rocks against each other. The spark, comes out and it hits some type of the kindle, right? Some straw or whatever, it starts to burn. It takes time. They got to keep striking it until finally it catches fire, right? But it takes time. It's not like you just make fire off your fingertips or you strike it once and boom, the fire comes out. It takes time. It's like if you keep taking action, what's going to happen is you're going to be set on fire. You got to keep taking action to be set on fire. Action is the answer to be set on fire. And you got to understand this. Once you lose it, you're done. It's so hard to get back. And this reminds me of a parable that Sunsteam gave like long time ago when I was learning the parables lesson. And he said, imagine someone's on a journey. And as they're on their journey, they're looking around and, they pick up things off the ground and just looking at things like rocks and this and that. And one time he finds something. It's an interesting thing stuck in the ground. He looks at it and it says the number 4. He's like, huh? He puts it in his pocket. And he's going along his journey, picking up other rocks, putting in his pocket, doing this and this. And as he's, going along, picking up more and more things, his pockets are getting heavier. And then he decides to kind of like empty his pockets. So he starts emptying his pockets, all the rocks and all the other different things he put in. And he comes across that number 4 again. He's like, huh, what's number 4? I don't know. Then he throws it away. And then he keeps walking along and he trips over something. He gets back up, looks at it, and he sees something else. And it says 2 plus 2. And he looks at that and he's like, wait a second, wasn't there something that I had before that I picked up? I completely forgot it. And he throws that away too. And he completely forgets why he has it. And it's kind of the same way as we listen to the message. There's like questions we have in our thoughts and our hearts. How do we get set on fire? And then as we go through life, we kind of throw that question away. And then here we get an answer from it and we completely forgot the question. We're like, oh, interesting. Yeah, if you keep taking action, you'll be set on fire. We're like, all right, cool, next. All right, what's this week's message about? But the answers are all there. On the journey, we have this question of how do we set ourselves on fire? Today gave the answer. Keep taking action, you'll be set on fire. And then he gives a second answer is, you better keep taking action because once you stop, it's hard to set that fire again. And the thing that it reminds me of right now is exercising. I haven't really exercised as hard as I should or even close to it for like 2 months. I don't want to do push-ups. I don't want to jump and hop in my room. I just want to sit on my chair and do a podcast. That's all I want to do. It's so hard to get that fire back. But the only way to do it is I have to start exercising again. And as I start exercising and grinding, even though I'm just like, oh, I don't want to do this, I'll soon get that fire again. There's the answer. And this is what we do in the messages. Sometimes you just get a statement and you're wondering, why did he say that? Like no one asked the question and he didn't even bring up a question. He just says, as you're taking action now, you guys are on fire, keep taking action. Like, all right. Once you lose it, it's hard to get back. And we're like, okay. And then he goes on to the next thing and we're like, okay, right? And I had to start it. I was like, this is crazy. From the very get-go, we get an answer to one of the questions we've always wanted. The second point I want to talk about today, there's so many points, obviously in every week's message, so many points, but another really good point from the beginning. I haven't even gotten, my first 2 points are at the beginning, and I got so much stuff to think about for the next couple of days, for the rest of the week. But another point that I really, really agree with is when in the message it said like people say they love God and the Lord, but they read the Bible just once. Oh, and there's something that we talk about all the time is about reading the Bible. And he said the same thing with reading my letters. You just read it once. I ask people, how many times you read it? Once? Really carefully? All right. But you can't really get the message, right? The real message by reading it just once. You might not get the nuances and the inner messages, like how deep it is. But it brings us back to the importance of the Bible. It's this big letter from God. But if you think about it, the Bible's not just like, if you look at every major religion in the world, everyone has their Bible. Obviously not the Bible, but they have all have their own Bible, right? Buddhism, they have their scriptures. It's called the Tipitaka. Islam has the Quran and the Hadith. Judaism has the Talmud, right? You have all these every religion has their sacred scriptures, and they study it like it's the Bible. But the interesting thing is the bigger problem is the people who believe in the Bible is because one of the problems that we have in our minds is we think everything's done. Everything's already finished. Jesus died on the cross, so now everything's finished. Just chill. You don't have to do anything. You don't need to read the Bible. You're saved. You're going to heaven already. So it almost feels unnecessary to read the Bible. People just believe, and they're done. While every other religion in the world is reading their scriptures like it's literally the words of God when it even isn't, but we have the words of God. And this is one of the things that he said is if you read the Bible really well, you're going to understand me. You're going to understand the messages really well. Even when I tell you to read the scriptures the day before, don't read it just once. Read it a bunch of times. And the more you read it, the more you understand it, the more you're going to understand what the words I gave you today. The words I gave you on Sunday and Wednesday and in the mornings. So it's something that we really have to think about is for us too when it comes to us reading the scriptures, reading the Bible. Are we really understanding it or trying to understand it. Because I think one mistake we do think, like a lot of people make, is they read it and they're like, I don't understand it, and they stop. But the purpose is not so much you're supposed to read it and understand it right when you get it. It's actually you're reading it until you understand it. You're reading it until you get revelation. You're reading it until you have understanding. You're reading it until you grasp something higher from it. And that's a really important thing we have to understand is, it has to really go beyond all those things that just the things in our mind is. We put so many limitations and so many things into our heads because it almost feels like we're a privileged generation. And the reason I say it's privileged because everything we have at our fingertips. Every answer. You know that when I was growing up, there's no internet. So you remember, those times where someone talks about a movie and you all forgot the title. We're like, oh man, what was the title? Hey, what was that title? And it just kills us trying to remember that song or that movie that everyone is talking about. We're like, wait a second, what's that song? What's that song? And we would sit there racking our brains for like days. But this generation, it's like, what was that? Oh, who's in? Okay, let me just check. And you just check on your smartphone, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, yeah, that movie, Usual Suspects. Yeah, with that dude. What's it? Oh, man, now I forgot what his name is. Oh, Kevin Spacey, right? It's interesting. It's a very privileged generation, or it's a very comfortable generation. There's not a lot of difficulty, and it almost seems like we've got ourselves into a position where we don't want to go through much struggle. But we do. It's the only way to grow. Going through struggle. Not suffering and pain. It's struggle. It's completely different. If you think everything is pain and struggling, that's a terrible mentality. Some of it's okay. All right? So, going on from this, I picked a great song to go with this. Okay? With this privileged generation. Okay? And this song that I'm choosing today, I love this song. Everyone, this song, you know when this song came out? This song came out the year this history began, and also the year I was born, which is 1978. You're like, what? Oh man, am I really gonna know this song? And I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm sure everyone has heard this song before. It's a song that is so fitting for what we just talked about on this Monday. It's fitting because Monday's a day we go, it's the beginning of the week. We're just starting the week. We have to go through an entire week of work or whatever it is. So it's a struggle. Coronavirus time, it's a struggle. So the song I chose is from Gloria Gaynor. And I'm sure you know what song I'm going to play now. The song is I Will Survive.
At first I was afraid, I was petrified. Kept thinking I could never live without you by my side. But then I spent so many nights thinking how you did me wrong. And I grew strong, and I learned how to get along. And so you're back from outer space. I just walked in to find you
And that is Gloria Gaynor. I'm sure everyone, you know that song, right? Yeah, everyone knows that song. That song is from 1978. It's been it's like 42 years, and it stood the test of time. It's still being played today, and it's I Will Survive. No matter how difficult it gets, I'm not going to crumble. I will survive. It almost sounds like the song for the Ambition Masterpiece that fell down 5 times, right? I will survive. So let's get into one of the favorite parts that we all like, which is the member story of the day. Today's story will be my story, and this is actually I was inspired to give this story because there was another listener who was reminding me, he's like, oh, you know, I really like your stories, and then they told me about this story that really touched them, and it made them understand God better. So I'm going to do a story today of when I went to first pioneer a church in London, England. Okay, so this is going to be one of those types of stories. When you're going to hear this story, you're going to be like, oh my gosh. Okay, so let's get into my story. So the year is 2005, right? So we're like 15 years ago, and I graduated from university in 2002, and I went back to Canada, and I was helping to pioneer a church over there in Vancouver. And after 3 years, Sunseam asked me to go to London to pioneer a church over there. And just honestly, I was pretty reluctant to go because, you know, you're so comfortable, especially being with my family in my house. My mom's cooking. Everything is just done, right? And, you know, I was just like, oh, I don't have enough money. I just had too many excuses. And I know I gave this testimony about a month ago too. But I ended up going, and you remember it's 2005, and I realized at that time, it's like, oh, I'm a missionary and I need to write reports and stuff, so I should have a laptop. So this thought, I don't know if this is what you call inception. I don't know. Someone put this in my mind, and all of a sudden I felt like I had to get a laptop. I just got to get one. And as the idea keeps growing in my mind, I'm like, oh, what kind of laptop should I get? And I'd be like, every day I'd stop by into the electronics store and I would just look at laptops. And I thought to myself, wow, I really need a laptop. I can report and I can do this. I can be on the internet. So many different things I can do. And every day I look at computers, these laptops, the ones I can afford. Of course, 2005, 15 years ago, it wasn't as expensive. It's like, it's cheaper today, but you can still get that price of a computer. It's just that it's not as good as the computers are today, right? So I was looking at these computers. I was like, wow, they're so expensive. But if I get this one, it's not very good. And then, you know how your eyes are bigger than your pockets. So it's just like, oh, but I could just get this one, can I? And I keep thinking, and by every day, if you go every day to the electronics store, you're just looking at better and better laptops and just drooling over them, and it's almost like you can't go back down. You know what I mean? You can't help it. Like, you go to buy one thing and you buy like 3 things higher than that, like 3 levels higher, and you pay so much more money. And here I don't even have the money to do it, but I'm like, God, I really need a laptop. God, I need a laptop. And every day I am looking at these laptops. And one day what happens is the craziest thing, because I'm praying about this, I'm thinking about it, I'm like, wow, this is crazy, I really need a laptop. I come out of the electronics store, and there's some English dude there, right? Some English dude, like, leaning against the wall. And he turns to me and he says, you need a laptop. And I was like, are you from God? Like, in my mind, I was like, whoa, how'd you know? Like, how'd you read my mind, right? This is so crazy. And, when I look at it now, obviously this guy sees me going there every day looking at laptops, right? So he basically said, you need a laptop? And in my head, I was like, this is God's answer to my prayer. And he's like, hey, I got a laptop for sale. I was like, great. He takes me to the back alley. Okay, so this is already sounding pretty creepy, right? But I was desperate, right? You can tell I was desperate, because I went into this back alley where it's a quiet place, you can't see anyone. And he tells me to get in the car. And I was like, all right, let's just get in the car. So I got in the car. Like, tell me how crazy that is. I am in the car, and he's like, they take out this notebook bag, laptop bag, and take out this really nice Sony laptop. And he's like, hey, I'm going through some really difficult times right now. Well, he had an English accent. I'm just terrible at English. Like, hello. I'm going through some difficult times right now. But I sound like kind of Australian, right? But he's like saying, yeah, it's like, I go through a difficult time and, you know, we really need the money. And I was like going, oh my gosh. And I thought to myself, God, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. And then I said, okay, well, how much? The guy says, 1,500 pounds. And 1,500 pounds in American dollars is like $2,500. Okay, so this is like crazy expensive. And I'm like, dude, no, I don't have that type of money. I'm sorry. And I was just, you know, I was like, oh my gosh, maybe this is not it. And he looks at me and says 1,200. And I was like, dude, and these are pounds. Like that's like $2,000, more than 2,000. I'm like, no, I can't do it. And then he's like, 800. And I was like, this is crazy. The first thought that comes to my mind is, how low can I go? So I was like, so I got interested. I was like, I'm gonna. These guys are desperate, and I'm gonna get them. And he goes down to 400, and I was like, yeah. And honestly, I didn't have that much money. Yeah, I might have had, you know, I didn't have that much money in my account. I couldn't buy it on the spot. And then he looks at me and says, how much can you afford? And then I start to think to myself, like, what can I get these guys for? And honestly, I'm sitting there like, I'm going to get a great deal today. And God is blessing me with this laptop. I'm like, yes. And I went for a ridiculous number. It's a 1,500 pound. Like, oh, that's like $3,000. 1,500 pound laptop. You know what I told them? 200 pounds. And you know what the guy says? Oh man, I can't. He stops. And then he says, okay, I'll do it. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. I gotta get a new laptop. And then I looked at him, and he looked at me. He's like, he looks at me and says, you got the money on you? And I was like, actually, I don't. I need to go to the bank machine. He's like, okay, we'll follow you there, right? I'm thinking nothing of this. And then, like, I'm sure all of you listening are just like going, what the heck is happening right now? Is he actually going to do it? He's going to go to the bank machine with these two guys, right? And I go to the bank machine, and no, don't worry, I wasn't stupid. I said, hey, you guys stand right there, and I'll get the money. And they're like, okay. And they're standing like a good, I would say at least 10 to 15 meters away. Like, they're far away. I said, stay there. And I looked at them while I'm getting the money out of the bank machine, took out 200 pounds, and I thought to myself, is this actually going to happen? I'm going to have this 1,500 pound laptop for 200 pounds. This $3,000 US dollar laptop for like $400. I'm like, oh, God, thank you so much. 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 And I put the money in an envelope and I give it to the guy. And I thought to myself, oh, something could happen. And then he gives me the laptop. And I started walking backwards, watching them leave. Because I'm like, uh-oh, are they going to mug me later? Are they going to beat me up for this? But then they left. And the first thing I did was, I was so excited, I ran to Starbucks. Okay? Now, I ran to Starbucks because they have free internet. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to use this new laptop I just got. I'm so happy. God, I'm so thankful. I was so happy. I went straight to the counter and I ordered the most expensive drink on the menu. It was a venti caramel macchiato. I ordered it with confidence and pride, like, I am not, how can I not celebrate this moment with the Lord who has given me this gift of a laptop? And you know, this is exciting. And I run downstairs for my caramel macchiato. I sit down. I'm like, yes. And they even gave me a free laptop bag. And then, zip, I open the bag and I pull it out. And instead of a laptop, it was a phone book that came out. Huh? I look in the bag. There's 2 bricks on the bottom to give it weight. And I was like, oh my gosh, they conned me. They put the laptop somewhere else. They sold me that for 200 pounds, for $400 US, and they gave me a phone book, and all they lost was a computer bag. And I ran outside. Running to the place where they got me. They were gone. I went to the police. They said nothing they can do about it, but they'll check and see what happens. And, you know, England's known for like Big Brother. They have cameras everywhere, but lo and behold, that area there was the one place that there's no camera. It was ridiculous. It was crazy. And I went back to Starbucks, and I've just lost 200 pounds. And I just spent like £5 on a venti caramel macchiato, and I was like, oh, what? What's going on? I just got caught. You gotta be kidding me. I was so sad, angry, bitter, and I was just like, I went from thanking God to, oh my God, right? You know, this is just crazy for me. And it was so embarrassing, I couldn't tell anyone. I didn't tell the other missionary that was with me. I didn't tell anyone in the church. I just didn't go out to eat that much, and I was just poor for a bit because it was terrible. You know, can you imagine how embarrassing that is? And then, you know, later, since he talks about don't get conned, and this is like years later, but I was just like, what the? Oh my gosh. And you know, a month goes by. You know, you start to forget it. And then 2 months later, 2 months after that incident, you know, I get a call from my parents. My parents are like, oh, we just sold the business. I was like, oh, that's great. Good job. I was like, oh, thank God, right? And they're like, and they said, hey, do you need a laptop? And I was like, ooh? They're like, do you need a laptop? And I was like, yeah, why? And they're like, hey, we just sold the business for more than it's worth. So basically what happened in Canada is if you want to immigrate to Canada, because a lot of people immigrate to Canada first so that they can immigrate to the US. So what happens is, in order to immigrate to Canada, you need to have a business. So this rich Korean family comes and buys my mom's deli for like a premium. And they let them work and pay them to work there. So they have all this extra money. And they ended up buying me a laptop. And they sent me a new laptop 2 months later. Right? So now, like, okay, honestly, I'm happy as heck. I'm so happy. And, you know, I eventually got the laptop and my prayer was answered. And the thing I realized later was, man, it's just human beings. We have just no foresight. Like, we can't, it's so sad because we can't see the future. And this is why we really need to trust in God. You know, if I just, you know, I prayed to God, and if I just waited for God's time, it may not have been when I wanted it, when I was so desperate to get it, when honestly I didn't really need it. Think about it. I went 2 months without it. And I was okay. I didn't desperately need a laptop to write all those reports. I could use someone else's. I can go to the library and use a computer there. But, you know, I wanted it in my time. And, you know, it got my eyes got the best of me going to this electronic store each and every day. And I realized that, yeah, just human beings, we just tend to take matters into our own hands because in our minds we think we need it right now. But when God answers prayers, I truly believe God answers prayers. It's just the answer is when, right? That's a big thing. Is when will the prayer be answered? And this is when we have to trust in God. And this is when our prayers, we keep praying to God and it'll be fulfilled. Like, can God not get me a laptop? Like, come on, right? In the same way too, I'm in the exact situation right now and I'm not even worried. Just got to pray about it, right? As you know, my laptop, you know, I've been in Malaysia. My laptop has not worked for the last like 2 months. It's a MacBook Air, but you know what? It's so good because that MacBook Air is the first generation from 2010, which means it lasted me 9.5 years, which is so amazing, right? If you think about it, that's amazing. And even in my head, I'm like, you know what? It's fine. It's fine. Why? Because just as God has helped me before, He's going to help me again. That's all, you know, and we just got to trust that we trust in God, and God will give things at the right time. Everyone, just like that crazy story, we got to trust. And when we pray, God will give us those things in the right time. And we just need to wait for it and keep praying about it. Because one thing I do know is, and it's in the message all the time, is the constant prayer of it shows how much we're going to truly value it. It's true. How much we pray for it each and every day will show God how much you're going to really value that thing that God gives you, and how much we're going to give thanks. And you can tell how much Sunstein values everything he gets from God because he talks about it all the time. And he brags about what God gives all the time. And that's from someone who is praying about it constantly, and he values it, and God knows that if he gives it to him, he's going to value it more than anything else. So I hope that this story helps you out. It's definitely a good memory jogger for me, because it's been 15 years since that's happened, which is crazy amazing. But I hope that story was also fulfilling for you guys, and I encourage all you guys to please come out and send your send your stories. Right? Send your stories. I think it's not just me that wants to hear them. To be honest, lots of people want to hear them. People are inspired and moved. People always tell me about these member stories. They're so inspired and moved by. It's the same thing with you guys. All you got to do is what? Just got to put them out. And don't think that no one's going to be inspired. There's going to always be someone who's been in that situation. All right? So I hope that you guys were able to just receive something from this. And I really hope it inspires you guys too, so that you guys will also be able to send your stories in, send your requests for songs also. All right, that means we're getting to the end of today's podcast. It is Monday the 18th. Can everyone have a wonderful, wonderful day, wonderful start of the week, and we will see you guys again tomorrow. Everyone, thank you so much.
Gotta believe in yourself. Cause no one else will.
You have the power